If you're joining us, well, I'm Heather and I'm with Sam Keith, and we're here to just chat with you about a few things, minimalism, sustainability, and oral health. We met because of oral health and my company BOGO Brush, and Sam is a dentist, among all sorts of other things, and we just have a lot of interesting values. Sam's been doing some blogging for BOGO Brush, and we just really love your perspectives, and one of my goals is to be doing a lot more of these kinds of conversations with really interesting people. So thought this is a great way to kind of keep moving things forward for both of us.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's been
cool.
fun with you guys, so.
And your Instagram name is The Debtist, and I thought that would be kind of a really interesting place to start. Maybe before we even really jump into that, a little overview is, from my lens, when I think about sustainability, I have a few different models that resonate with me, but in particular, I think about sustainability in the kind of the most traditional academic sense of the three pillars or the three prongs. So environmental or eco values, our economic, financial values, and our social or our human relationship values. And under those kind of pillars, the idea is that something is sustainable when those three components are in balance. And that's something we try to do with BOGO Brush. That's something I try to talk a lot about myself. And so, yeah, kind of that's the framework, but I think The Debtist, I think it's so interesting. It's like a clever spin, but I'd love to hear, why The Debtist?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. I've always been a word junkie. I love to read and write, and so I love that play on words. The fact that I chose dentistry, obviously, but in order to become a dentist, I had to take a whole bunch of debt, like student loans, in order to pursue my education. And then when I graduated, it was kind of both equally defined me. The fact that a lot of student loans, it really shaped my whole life and the way I viewed, I guess, how I wanted to live it. And then also dentistry is my profession, so that defined me as well, and shaped who I became. So I just kind of put the two together, and I was like, oh, this is who I am. Instead of, I think a lot of people, they shy away from it, and they're like, oh man, I have all this debt, and they feel really negative about the whole thing. I just decided well, this is what it is. Let's embrace it, and this is who I am now. So yeah.
There's so many cool things you said. I mean, one of the things, so people know BOGO Brush, or you know me, you know that I grew up as a child of a dentist. Yep. And he's my dad's very involved with organized dentistry, and so a lot of the issues that are within the dental world, I'm fairly familiar with, one of those being debt, and how astronomical dental student debt is. I mean, all student debt is wild now, but I think dental students face an incredible amount of debt. I went to law school and I had some debt, but nothing near what I hear dental students are coming away from. So I don't know, was that something you knew would happen going into dental school, or did it surprise you?
So it wasn't a surprise. I think everyone knows, going to dental school, this is how much it's going to cost. They'll tell you up front. It's not like throughout the process, they're oh, this is going to be an extra whatever dollar, It's so it's weird. It's so accepted that you don't really question it. Mm-hmm. A lot of people question it. And at that age, you're early 20s. You don't really have a concept of how much it could affect your life, or what the process is with repayment. Even when you go into undergrad, I feel we have 18-year-olds, taking out tens of thousands of debt, which is less than what I have, but it's still a lot. It's a serious thing to sign up for, but I don't know. It was just accepted. I knew about it, and I just did it. So
I think it's cool, and I love how you're talking about your perspective on it as being one of positivity. I think that's something that I try to talk about a lot, no matter what it is. When we look at these things, we have choices to be stressed out or to be not. And when we put stress there, it just blocks the energy from us being able to move forward as smoothly.
I love that.
I kind of in thinking about what to talk about. One of the things that I know, like with the Debtist that you were talking about, is your strategies for how to, repay debt. And I think, to me, a couple of the things that your message really shares is about minimalism and, of course, like environmental, like sustainability. But I think in particular with minimalism, like how did minimalism sort of become part of you? Or maybe first, like what is minimalism to you? And then I'm interested in how that relationship works with you paying off your debt. Like which one came first, or did they sort of inform each other?
They kind of came hand in hand. I think I discovered minimalism around the same time that I was graduating from dental school, which was like in my mid-20s. And it was just, I'd say around 26 was when I first started to really like start to understand my place in the world and like and how I viewed life, I guess. It's when everything started to come together. And so it's not like I was in debt and then I decided, I want to be minimalist. It's more like when I graduated from dental school, I've been in school for like 26 years. I worked multiple jobs and I like balanced school and work and hobbies and all these things, like volunteer. And I was just kind of like coming from a place of overwhelm. And so I think I wanted to create space. And the only way I knew how was to start in the physical sense, like decluttering, creating physical space. And then, after I did that, it was like mental space. And it's just like an ongoing process. I think the timing was just right that I graduated at that time. So they do feed each other. It helps to be minimalist and, it helps me on my, I guess, financial journey. It helps me accomplish my goals. So that's good.
Yeah. What was the first, do you remember kind of one of the first things that you started identifying as minimalism?
Definitely physical stuff, like decluttering. Initially I thought that's what minimalism was. Mm-hmm. I got to, I think, a point where I was like, okay, I'm done decluttering. I like got rid of all the stuff I don't want, but I still felt like a little overwhelmed. And so that's when I started to realize, well, maybe it's not the actual stuff, but the way I perceive stuff, the way I perceive like my situations. And so that's when I journey, the rabbit hole of like doing the mental decluttering and like meditating, a little bit of yoga, just introspection. And then started, and that's really what got me to be like reflective, the writing every day, just sitting down and like trying to figure out how I viewed things and what I thought about them as they were happening. Yeah. And it hasn't stopped. I don't think it ever stops.
Yeah, it's like it's a practice in a way, and not in a practice, yes, because you'll evolve and get better, but the practice, right, just like anything's a practice. It's like a lifestyle. It's something that you learn more about. For me, minimalism, like definitely I've known of it as like that same sense of decluttering and things, but also because I work with my brother who's a designer, industrial designer, I've been informed of minimalism a lot from, design aesthetic. Do you find that like you've been drawn more to like a minimalism sort of design aesthetic from that? Or, it's not like a right or a wrong, obviously. I'm just curious, how have those interplayed?
I think I definitely do. I'm drawn to certain products. Not so much like in the sense that if you go on Instagram, right, this is like what a minimalist bedroom looks like or what a minimalist living room looks like. I don't think my house looks like close to that. But I did, I guess, focus on which products I value based off of like what materials they're made out of or how they're, it just kind of focused me on what I wanted in the things that I purchased. But part of minimalism too is you don't purchase a lot. So I don't really come across that dilemma very often about like which product I would choose over another product. Yeah.
One quick piece. Yeah. I can see like your nose to your mouth. Now I see your face. You've been fine the whole time. Just all of a sudden it like dropped. So I thought I'd let you know so you're not like watching it later and like, what the heck? Why didn't she say anything?
Is it vertical for you on your screen, or is it horizontal?
So I'm looking at it, yeah, like vertical or portrait style, and then it cuts in
Oh,
half. I don't know if that's
okay.
how it is for you,
I'll try to
but
be thank you.
um, anyway, intermission to that. But yeah, I relate to what you're saying too on that, like minimalism. I think there is sort of there's a, I don't know what the right word is. I'll call it academic definition for minimalist aesthetic, but I think I personally relate to it in the way that you're saying. And like in terms of products, like for me, minimalism and sustainability just go so hand in hand. And obviously, like I've learned through creating BOGO Brush is, minimalism in materials. It's even not in like setting aside what material it is, even just the fact of like the fewer materials you use in something, the easier it is to like dispose of, whether it's recycling or, whatever it is. And that just naturally lends itself to a more simplified shape and aesthetic.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. What do you think, I mean, just another question on like the minimalism and financial piece is, what do you think is one of the more significant pieces of minimalism, or whether it's decluttering or whatever it is, that has helped you be kind of on your financial journey of like debt repayment?
Definitely just like being at peace with living with less. I think that's the good thing about it is it forces you to come from like a place of gratitude. And once you have that, it's very easy to just say like, well, I don't need that other thing. Like my life is complete. It's enough. And I think a lot of people are missing that. And part of it is like the way advertisements kind of feed us with like, you need more of this, you need more of this. Minimalism has helped me to say, look, I have this is all I need. And it allows me to focus my energy towards like paying back the student debt and like focusing on, okay, how can we make this part better? Because I'm focused on improving other parts of my life. So
I love that. It's like looking at your life as like an energy bandwidth. And I mean, I think we can attract more energy, and we can collaborate, and we can always like have more energy, but at the same time, when it's so scattered, it's difficult to channel that and to really be focused. I know focus is a thing that I'm constantly evolving more towards. I just have so many things I want to do, which I'm learning is okay, but to like focus the energy, otherwise nothing happens. It's just all, but do you have, so like with that, like how do you have kind of parameters or boundaries that you've set for yourself to help you stay within that, like, I don't know, only owning X number of shirts or something like that? Or is it more like a feeling in a sense that you get?
Yeah, it's more like a feeling, or like I like to say like a mindfulness, like a mindset. It's not like, oh, I'm only gonna buy one shirt every year. Like I don't put a number to it or anything like that. But most of the time it's like I'll see something and I'm like, oh, I kind of want that, but immediately my mind just goes to well, do you really need it? I mean, how often are you going to use it? Like, it asks the practicality question. It asks, like, how much do you really value that, And I don't know, like, how much will it make your life better? That's the main question. Like, how will buying this really improve your life? And most of the time it comes down to it doesn't, and maybe I don't need it,
That's I love that question. Like, how will this improve my life?
Yeah.
And that's great. And I think too, like not being afraid to say, oh, that will improve my life, and allowing it to, like not getting down on yourself because you acquire something. But I like that. It's like all mindset definitely is everything you're talking about is you've trained your mind to ask certain questions, and you're practicing gratitude so that you're okay with not grabbing everything you see.
Right. And if you buy something, it's really important to like not come from a place of guilt either. Like you shouldn't feel guilty because you felt like, I think a lot of people who are trying to pursue minimalism, they have this vision of like, I should only have 10 items in my closet. if I won, they're like, oh man, like I failed. I like there's this idea of what minimalism is, and it makes people feel like, oh, I'm failing at minimalism. I should just give up or whatever. But that's not what it is about. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you feel the same way. Like,
I think of it a lot, like in what you're describing, I think of it a lot in terms of, well, sustainability, which for me is this huge topic. When I'm like in workshops and things, I always say that I think of sustainability as the balance of all things. And in a lot of ways, it's sort of like understanding the universe and the way that it fits balance in, sort of like, how do we fit into that? But yeah, I agree that I think guilt that's been a thing I've been learning and seeing in myself as like a limiting belief, if you will, as more and more over the past years, especially, and how that really doesn't produce good things. You just feel too bad about yourself. And I see this a lot in the world of sustainability. I think in sustainability right now, a lot of the focus is on the environmental values, which is totally fine. But, oh, my dog is dreaming. I don't know if anyone can hear that, but she's like, in any case, like feeling guilty about the choices we make for the environment. And I think this is a space where minimalism and the environment can overlap, right? A lot of environmental movement is own less things, which I think is great. And I guess kind of with that is like, how did like the environmental side of things come into your life and your practices?
That is such a defining moment for me. It's so easy to answer. So one day my husband and I just sat down and we watched one documentary. It's called A Plastic Ocean. I don't know if you've seen it.
I don't know if I've seen that one, but I mean, maybe I've seen so many.
It was on Netflix, and it was just talking about like, plastic and how much we use it and how long it takes for it to actually degrade and disappear and the effects. And that one movie like brought me down this huge rabbit hole. I think because it relates particular to me, like because I'm from the Philippines, and it's one of those places where I think we've talked about like the Bahamas, or they're just like small spaces and islands, and they don't really have the same ways that we do to kind of get rid of trash, and so it accumulates much faster in these areas, in these small spaces. And when you see the accumulation, it's like you start to really like realize, oh my God, this is all the things that we consume and we add to the environment that maybe you and I don't see every day because, we just throw in the trash can, we forget about it, and we don't really know where it goes. And, so to me, it was just like really relatable, and it hit really close to home where I was born. This is like where I grew up as a kid, and now I look at pictures of it and it's like totally just unrecognizable because there's just stuff everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. My mind is like spinning on all kinds of things, but I think like,
ask all the things.
Well, one of the things that's so interesting to me is this conversation about plastic and I mean, it's amazing and great that especially, in America and kind of more, shall we say, developed countries, that there's a lot more awareness on that. I think one of the things that my brother and I talk about is that, this is all great. It's definitely helpful for us to be more aware. However, most of the plastic that's ending up on, those islands or in the ocean, like, isn't the plastic that's coming from us.
Coming from them.
And that's the whole systems change, right? So it's not like a passing of the blame at all. It's just this like, it's such a big problem. Most of the plastics that we use do go into a landfill or go into recycling and are, not ending up in the ocean. Again, not that that's a perfect thing, but it's just like, okay, so it really is this very big system-wide, issue. And we're starting to do some work with some groups in the Maldives who, of course, are dealing with a sort of a similar thing. It's not exactly the same because obviously they're maybe it's not obvious, but their income, their economy is based on tourism, and climate change and the rising seas is threatening them. But still, like, what do they do with waste? And how are they turning, like, they're doing things like turning waste into energy and trying to solve for some of these problems that people in America don't really have to deal with.
Yeah.
So anyway, that my mind like went all to that. But so when you watched that documentary, like, when was that? Like, how many years ago?
Oh, I don't know, 2.5.
Okay.
Yeah, fairly recent, actually.
I mean, like I said, I think there's so many similarities between what you're doing with minimalism and sustainability. So, I mean, you were practicing it, like,
Yeah. I think the timing was just like really, really perfect for them to, and they all do go hand in hand. So it just like clicked. And what I was doing in one sphere, like minimalism, happened to feed what I was doing when I said like, oh, I'll cut like all this stuff, like this plastic stuff that I'm like purchasing. It just happened to like feed it. So then you have this momentum that kind of, or I did, that kind of like towards a path or a trajectory. And now I'm here.
I totally agree. For me, and my introduction into like this kind of thinking came through the food system. When I was in law school, I studied food law and was like, oh my gosh, what's going on in our food system and industrial agriculture, and right, how that affects, well, everything, health and the planet and our economic systems and the policies and all these things. But my point in that is like, yeah, I think I didn't really understand like food system in terms of huge sustainability right away, but we get these windows, and then we start, like, our thought patterns change. And I think that's a really important thing, is it's like not trying to accomplish everything. Like, we have to be patient with ourselves and trust that over time, like, our habits are going to keep evolving and we're going to be able to do more and more. With sustainability and environmental things, one of the things that I often think about is its relationship to like financial things. And there's definitely truth, but also, you know, I don't know, maybe misconceptions that sustainable products are more expensive. How have you reconciled that in terms of, you know, your dedication to your budget and your debt payment?
I think there's some truth that sustainable products are more expensive. But at the same time, I think a lot of companies are riding this wave of like eco-friendliness. They're creating more and more products, and now there's more and more options of like sustainable products. And I kind of veer towards the not buying things, you know, path. So most of the time it's in line with my financial goals, because my idea of minimalism and sustainability is to just borrow from somebody else, buy, you know, used, or pick up stuff that people don't want anymore and use that instead. So I usually don't fall in the trap of like, well, now that I want to be sustainable, I want to buy like wooden brushes, and I want to change all my, you know, my bags to and I because it's so easy to fall down that, you know, that path of like, okay, I'm going to be sustainable. Let me get rid of everything I already own and buy all sustainable stuff. In reality, it's like you're just getting rid of stuff, and that goes to the landfill. And so, yeah, I mean, that's my 2 cents on it. I know it's different for everybody, but that's how I do.
It is different for everybody, but I like what you're saying, because it's an approach that's perfectly valid. It's probably approach that's similar to how I am. I'd rather use something as long as I possibly can. I mean, as long as it's still effective. I mean, since we're both in oral health, right? Like, don't use a toothbrush for a year and a half. Like, that's not good for you're not doing as good for your mouth. So probably don't do that. But use things to their full extent, and, you know, be conscious of that, because sustainability is everything. It requires us to think about like these whole life cycles. I don't believe there's one right way today. I don't think we have that answer. So I think it's good to hear like other perspectives as well. It's not just heaving all your stuff into the trash and buying new stuff.
Thoughts on it? Like, I feel like do you feel like you grapple with the like more expensive products is more sustainable and like that whole issue or?
I think, well, personally, I've come to a place where, and maybe it's not been as like directly conscious, but for me, I also, I try to have less, like fewer things, not replacing something every time, clothes or like these kinds of goods that aren't really needed. Things, but I still feel happy. I don't believe in the feeling of deprivation. I think that is not a healthy mental state to be in, but I think that, yeah, buying responsible products, definitely in my experience, they are more expensive. However, I look at it is that they're only like more expensive when we look at our dollars. They're not more expensive when I look at the whole cycle. So buying a pair of jeans that was made by hand by like someone who's getting paid a fair wage and whatever, they're offsetting their shipping emissions. To me, that's worth it. And I'm going to wear that pair of jeans for years until
probably every day.
Yeah.
Like 20 jeans.
Exactly. So it's kind of that, it's slow fashion versus fast fashion, or even, with our product, it's like, it's more expensive than other manual products when you look at the dollar, but also, we're using materials that are more responsible than a random plastic toothbrush, or all these things that add to the value. So it's like maybe on that one lens of a dollar it feels more expensive, but when I look at those kinds of things in my life as a whole, I think that they either last longer, or I know that the tail of that product isn't causing as much harm. So
well, I love how you put in the perspective of like, what is the true cost, of this product? And my approach with like the dentist, or I try, is it can't all come from like a financial standpoint. If it does, then money wins, right? It dictates everything, and we don't really want that. So I love how you say like, okay, what is the actual cost of it in terms of the environment and in terms of like other people and how we treat them and just everything, how it makes us feel. And yeah, it's a well-balanced whole like picture.
exactly. And that's why I think it's foolish of us to point fingers and judge behaviors when it's coming from a place of good intention, because we don't have the full picture of what our choices are doing. So it's good, obviously, ask questions, like let's demand improvements and all these kinds of things. But I don't think there's like this one silver bullet answer. And it's, asking ourselves the questions, just like we were saying earlier, like once your mind starts asking questions on something, whether it's minimalism or financial or anything, you start to develop that thought pattern in other places. And I think that's for me the key. And you've probably experienced this, but once I've like went down to like, I think I literally have 2 pairs of jeans and maybe like 4 pairs of pants, maybe 5. And once I went down to that from like 20 or whatever it was, like I realized I felt perfectly fine and perfectly good. And it's like, like the energy starts to feed itself, and you are energetically rewarded when you make choices that feel good. That was like a trail, but you also said something about like people, and I want to touch just a little bit on this, what I think of in sustainability as the social component. And in terms of what you and I are talking about, I thought of it in terms of health and dentistry and oral health. And I'm curious, what drew you to dentistry?
Oh, I don't know. I've been saying I wanted to be a dentist since I was like 8. And it could have been a number of things. I mean, I think at that age, I just wanted to like help people. And my parents were like, oh, well, this is a good way to help people, is to be like a dentist or a doctor. But I mean, as I got older, I started to form why I actually wanted to be a dentist.
Mm-hmm.
I shadowed as a dental assistant before I even got into dental school. I'm a very creative person. So I saw that you work with your hands a lot, and you create not just like, I guess, teeth out of nothing, but you also create relationships and you create like um, kind of your own way of practicing dentistry. And so that really appealed to me, is like you have the autonomy to kind of decide how you want it to be and how you want to treat people and your patients. And so, yeah, eventually it just became like the artistic creative side that like sealed the deal. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be a dentist.
That's cool. I'm like, what I'm hearing is like there's this artistic creative side, but then
Yeah.
this relational side. Do you find that, I mean, your quality of work is obviously good no matter what, but do you find that the creative side is like reflects the relationships with each person? Do you know, like, do you feel anything like that when you're in the process?
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually, like everyone says your quality of work, like in dentistry, is the most important. But I feel like sometimes the education system fails a lot of medical professionals because they put health and safety like above everything else.
Mm.
Really, in the end, you're not dealing with like a thing. Like it's not like a patient's a thing. It's a person. It's a human being, and we kind of have a tendency to say like, well, the right thing for you health-wise is this path, when really, in reality, the right thing for that particular person could be a different path. Sometimes it could be just like a non-treatment thing. So I think the relationship with the patient sometimes is more important than like the quality of the dentistry. Sorry, that was like a tangent. I just wanted to say that because
No, I love it so much.
it's
I
like,
think it relates to your artistic mind and your creativity. I consider that my mind works as a creative a lot too, and no other creatives. And I think that one of the values of creativity is how we are able to look at things from these different perspectives, like more easily, right, than a linear mindset, perhaps. There's obviously nothing wrong with either way. It's just I see like you kind of feel the artistry in the human and are open to these, I don't know if we should call them creative solutions, but not just standard textbook solutions for how do we actually help solve problems for people.
right. Yeah. So,
I kind of like, you were kind of touching on that. I kind of recapped like that the difference between what you're taught in medical school versus kind of reality of solutions. But what do you think are, I don't know, maybe two or three in your mind, like the top challenges that face the dental world today?
in relation to like the patients or like the dentist or actual dentistry or
I guess anything. I mean, maybe come from a place of like, what are the things that you care about and I don't know, maybe want to influence or you see as challenges in your kind of frame of view?
yeah. So I mean, I already mentioned how like I want to view patients as like actual people instead of like something to treat. Like it's not like a textbook diagnosis all the time. I think that's a shortcoming that we as dentists and medical professionals have. It's so easy to say like, no, this is the correct treatment. You have a cavity, you need a filling. When in reality, it's like, well, what if this person like has a holistic approach to medicine or health, And
Mm-hmm.
so for them, it's like they don't want to take the antibiotic or they don't want to, do the treatment. And it's so easy for us to be like, no, that's wrong. Like this is what you're supposed to do, and we don't think about the actual human being. So that's one thing. Also, access to healthcare. It's still a big problem. I know we've made like a lot of leaps and bounds. We made it so that brushing teeth is like a norm and everyone now knows how to brush teeth, but I think we can still educate a lot more about everything like diets or lifestyle choices, how that impacts your health. I think we kind of miss that little aspect. And then reaching out to those who don't have access to healthcare. It's so easy
Yeah.
to forget. There's so many, even in California, there's so many people in different parts of California that never see a dentist. It's, yeah.
Yeah. I know. It's like, so my brother John and I created Bogo Brush out of a passion for sustainability and wanting to create something that right, hit on these three pillars was an economic value, talked and cared about the environment, and also social things. And so when we were looking at different products to create, a toothbrush was one, and we're like, what is the social context of oral health? And I mean, this was now 7 years ago, and at that time there were like 80 million Americans who don't have adequate access to oral care, and it's just something you don't really think about. And like you're saying, like the impact it has on, well, your whole life, really. So I think that's interesting, and I think my mind is always connecting dots. That's how I work, and I see so much of what you're saying, even in that human element. Like, what are these solutions of, like, what is somebody's like personal life, and what is their circumstance and their philosophy, and are there ways that we can help educate and create access?
Right. Yeah.
In ways that don't feel threatening. I suppose I don't know, is it still a thing where people hate the dentist? I'm not sure. I feel
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't know like why that like became a thing, but apparently it is. So
Yeah, I mean, it's not comfortable. I don't blame them. I agree. But maybe it's like a social construct thing too. Like if you Google the dentist, the first thing that comes up is like this horror movie that they made like back in the
oh my gosh.
or something. So yeah, and I still see people come in and they're like, no offense, but like I hate the dentist. That's like the first thing they say to me. And I'm usually like, fine, that's fine.
You're like, that's fine. We'll make sure you like are healthy. At least you're here. Gosh. I mean, there's so much to talk about. We should definitely do this again. I mean, we're definitely over 30 minutes. I think one thing, just like one more question, it's maybe like two-part. I'm curious, like, do you have kind of like what your passion and what is your dream? Like just overall, like what is a dream that you're trying to reach for?
I mean, my passion, like I mentioned before, is just to be creative. I have to have like a creative outlet. Otherwise, like the days become kind of dull for me. And so I lose like meaning if I don't like create and feel that. Like I'll feel if I haven't written in a while, or I haven't like done something new or tried something new, my life just kind of feels like really devoid of something. And so I get that like pull of like, okay, I got to make something right now, or else I'm going to feel like in the slump, you know?
Yes.
But I guess my dream is just to continue creating and learning new things and trying to question like what
Oh,
no. Did I disappear?
you did for just a second. I could have been my internet too. You said your dream is to, I think you said keep creating.
Keep creating, just always creating. Yeah.
Yeah. Like lighting up your soul basically, so that and like one of the things that this will like officially be, but the last question, if it relates to that dream of like creating, have you ever felt like fear in continuing to follow that passion? And what have you done? Like, what do you do to overcome that fear?
I mean, I don't know if I do anything. I feel that fear, but I think the pull towards that passion is just a little bit stronger. And so most of the time it just like, I think about it for a second, but then I find a way to kind of continue on with what I'm doing. Yeah, I don't really do anything though in particular. It's just, I want it so bad that it just kind of like pulls me, in that direction.
You listen to it. That's basically what it is. I love it. Oh gosh. Okay. Well, for those of you who are still watching, if I hadn't properly introduced, we didn't even like pause halfway through to introduce you again, but this is Dr. Sam Keith. She's a dentist out in California. We've, through Bogo Brush, we've done some really cool things from blogging. I know we've supported some organization or an organization that you work with through your school and things. But aside from that, I know that even just personally, I'm so inspired by your efforts in minimalism and sustainability, and I'm glad that we had a chance to talk. And I think we should do it again and like dive deeper into some of these things. We like just skimmed the surface.
I know, this was fun. I feel like a lot of your questions were like, I go on forever talking about these little topics. So
Great. Awesome. Well, then let this be the first. And I know that we'll post this on Bogobrush, and I'll share this with you, and we'll
sure.
keep the conversation going.
Sounds good. Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Have a great day.
You. Bye.
All right. Peace.